This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Thank you to my latest rater and reviewer on the Apple Podcast Store, Chama6. Thank you for the kind words. You too can rate and review the podcast on the Apple Podcast Store. You can rate the podcast on Spotify and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening. If you follow me on Twitter and you are done with Twitter, I am on Mastodon at Graceful Atheist at mas.to. The links will be in the show notes, but you put that entire string into the search box at Graceful Atheist at mas.to, and you can find me there. Of course, our community group, Deconversion Anonymous, is still on Facebook. That will remain. And if you want to join, find us at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. For those of you in the United States, this is the Thanksgiving week. And I know how difficult that can be, especially if you are going home, visiting family. Politics and religion are just battlefields these days. I just want you to remember that you are not alone in all this. We are out here. Reach out to the community members, reach out to your friends in the deconstruction community to maintain some sanity. You are not the only one experiencing that. And I know, and I'm acknowledging, I see you. It is difficult. It is hard, but you can get through it. Special thanks to Mike T for editing today's show. On to today's show. Arline guest hosts today, and she is interviewing Ben and Ange. Ben and Ange are a couple. They got married fairly young due to purity culture, and they describe with brutal honesty the effects that growing up in that purity culture had on them and their marriage. Ben and Ange are experiencing freedom on the other side of deconversion, deconstruction, and now refer to themselves as agnostics. Here is Arline interviewing Ben and Ange.
Ben and Ange, welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hi.
I'm super excited. I met you guys through an Instagram influencer, and I am super, super excited to interview both of you. So the way we'll do it is I will just kind of bounce between the two of you, and we'll start off where we usually do. Angela, and then Ben, tell me about your spiritual environment growing up as a child.
Okay. Yeah, we're going right in. I was a child of divorce. And I mean, we all were in the 80s, but here's why this is relevant. My mom remarried a very fundamentalist, hardcore Bible literist. Literate, is that the right word? Literalist. Anyway, very fundamental. And that completely changed my little life. You know, I was 4, but things got kind of hard from there. And so I was raised non-denominational, which really just is, how a lot of churches were back in Florida where I was raised. And I did a lot of like dancing in the aisles, banner waving, and like that kind of a church. Very heavily like end times focused. So we had a big fear of the rapture or being left behind. So I remember even at 7 years old watching the Left Behind series from way back when and seeing people get decapitated. And to me at 7, that was horribly traumatic. And so from then on, my little brain associated religion with terror. You know, I was terrified. So I was very good, and I was, on the straight and narrow, not because I wanted to be, but because I was afraid. So it definitely kept me in line. It also messed me up. So that's a little snippet of how I was raised. How about you, babe?
Well, I was also raised in a non-denominational church. I had quite a bit of a different experience than Angela did. I mean, I say that, she cringes every time I say that because probably notices more than I did. And we were really heavily involved in the church. My dad was like I don't know what the term was, but like a head elder.
Hmm.
And
A councilman.
yeah, I
Oh.
don't know what it was.
Voted on stuff for the church.
Hmm.
Yeah. And, we did the all day Sunday events and the Wednesday nights. We had Awana, and it was just, that's what we did. That was it. We were just there all the time. Yeah, my parents' church, the church I grew up in, actually just this year dissolved. And I'm pretty excited for how it's going to turn out for the people that were still going there. I think it might kind of open their eyes to things that they might have put blinders on, but we'll see how that turns out.
It is interesting to speculate what can, yeah, open people's eyes, because sometimes something that seems so obvious, it takes really serious things to happen for other people to even start noticing them. So,
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can just say I noticed things about his upbringing that I'm like, wow, you survived that. And he's like, oh, that's not normal.
I
So,
understand.
isn't that funny? We can see that in other people, but maybe not in ourselves sometimes. So, we help each other.
How did you guys meet? What happened later as like
Yeah.
high school, college, or young adult life? Oof.
This is where things get juicy. No, it's funny. I don't know how we met, honestly. There was never a time where I was introduced to him and he was just there. He was always yeah, we were in the same circles, like church, youth group, homeschool kid circles. And there's just, it can be a very lonely place. And so you tend to cling to people that are nice to you.
It's very
And he
true.
was nice to me and he was cute.
Were
So,
you both homeschooled?
mhm,
Yes, we were both
big time.
homeschooled, and she didn't mention this, but um, she actually came to my childhood church for the Wednesday night Awana program when
Yeah.
we were younger, and then the church moved locations and she stopped going. She wasn't able to go anymore. But then in high school, we wound up in the same homeschool group, and that's how we kind of reconnected.
Wow. So you
So
guys have known each other since you were teenagers or since you were young.
Children. Yeah.
younger than teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started dating when we were 17, like officially. And he had a car. And it's funny because that was kind of like a scandalous thing in the purity culture circles. My mom didn't let me ride in cars with boys, but she looked at Ben and she's like, he has a good head on his shoulders. I think I trust him.
Mm.
And I just didn't tell my mom that we were hanging out.
No, his mother had no idea for 6 months. And it's honestly brilliant because,
Why cause problems?
yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. I did not grow up in the church.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious what my if my parents would have expected me to tell them who I was with or not.
Yeah.
My family was very like hands-off parenting, not always the
Jealous.
greatest idea.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't
But
lie about where I was going. I
mhm,
said I was going out with friends, and it turned
mhm,
out to be
A friend.
a friend.
that's true.
Friend.
I
Yeah, and so we stayed together. I went to college. I stayed in town so I could keep hanging out with him. And then right around the 3-year mark of dating, we're still very young. If you're doing the math, that's only 20. But I'll just say it, we were curious about sex. And that was not allowed at all. So we thought, okay, we don't want to go to hell. And they're all telling us we're going to go to hell if we do this thing. So let's get married so we can do this thing and get them off our backs. Really bad reason to get married.
Really bad parenting, probably, also, to teach
Sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah. And so it was hard. It wasn't super, I mean, we had some beautiful times, but it was really, really hard. We had our 2 kids, and they're amazing and perfect and everything. And then 2016 happened, and that's where things change.
So, marriage, you're doing marriage, you've had kids, all of that, Christianity's
Got
working.
a
Like the
house.
things that you guys have believed are working. Okay.
And then something happened. I know that for 2016, for a lot of people, 2016 was a big, big deal. And it was for me for more than one reason. We are from Orlando, and Orlando, the amount of love I have for this city is, I always say it's my first love. I feel like my heart is in Orlando. That is me. It's what raised me. And in June of 2016, we had a horrible, horrible mass shooting at Pulse, and it was a queer community. And I broke from that, and he couldn't totally understand, why is this affecting you so much. I mean, obviously he was sad, but it didn't change him, and it completely broke my heart open, and I didn't have the language to say why. And I felt guilty for feeling so sad. Like, who am I to think I have any skin in this, grieving? But it turns out that I was seeing how religion can make you horribly homophobic, and it can lead people to do horrible things. And that really made me break. And I went from thinking that religion was a kind and helpful tool to get you through life to being very terrified. And
Mm-hmm.
I should also mention that I have diagnosed OCD, and when you mix that with religious fears, it can be all consuming. And so I would get these thoughts in my head of just pure terror, of like, you're going to hell because you know you're a bad person or whatever. And I could not shut my brain off, and the more that I prayed for God to take it away, the worse my pain got. And I remember sitting in Bible study one night in our church that we were heavily involved in, and thinking, I'm going to die. My brain's going to kill me because I can't stop obsessing over this religious terror. And I would try, and I went to counselors who told me that I needed to stop, liking the devil so much, or something, yeah. they they just
Wow.
blamed it on the devil.
And naturally, there can't be mental health issues. There can't be circumstantial. It's just, let's pick a supernatural being and we'll go with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, what they don't tell you is a lot of counselors are religious people because they want to help people, but can't
they can't
they can't
understand.
understand what Angela was going
Mm-hmm.
through.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm not proud of this part of my story, except that now on the other side, I kind of am proud that I made it through. But I completely broke. I stopped going to church, and like, I don't know how to sugarcoat this, but I kind of stopped being a wife. And I loved Ben. I never stopped loving Ben, but I was so broken and so terrified that I didn't have anything to give. I just felt like a shell, and it was just a very lonely time, because anytime I would try to confide in a friend, they would say, "Oh, I'm praying for you." And I'd be like, "Please stop."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that went on for years and years. And in that time, I was finally able to kind of let go of my grip on religion because I realized it was fear, and that wasn't helping me, and I wasn't going to get better as long as I was holding on to that. And I had to be really honest with myself, and I learned that, oh yeah, I'm queer. But that
Oh,
was never allowed. And so obviously an event like Pulse is going to really be hard for me, and I couldn't tell anyone why. So it was about 4 years of turmoil of me trying to find what is real and what does being kind to myself look like, because I couldn't be married to someone if I couldn't even be kind to myself. How am I going to be kind to him? Not that I was a jerk. I mean, we were, kind to each other, but I had so much healing to do. And I will say, I give him all the credit in the world for being my friend through that time and for trying his hardest. He didn't always understand.
Hardly ever.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I did not understand. It completely caught me off guard, and
Same.
I I did not know how to handle a lot of situations, and I probably did not handle a lot of them well.
I didn't handle any of them well, so it's fine.
like you said, it catches you off guard.
Yes.
Dr. Laura Anderson has been on the podcast before, and there's so much understanding now of how trauma lives in the body and how our bodies will respond to things that our brains, we don't know why we're having such an issue with whatever the thing, like with the pulse, what happened at Pulse. Like you knew, but you didn't know that you knew. Your body
Mhm.
knew something more than you did, if that makes sense. And then yeah, when it's our spouse or our partner and we're Ben, like you're just trying to be there for her, but
Hmm.
you don't have any more knowledge, and it's an incredibly difficult time to
Yeah.
be in.
Yeah. And then it does have a happy ending, though, kind of. Um,
Hmm.
in 2020, obviously, that was another pivotal year. I feel like every 4 years. But in 2020, when the pandemic happened, something inside me felt safe enough to go back to him and say, hey, I'm ready to be your wife again. Which, what a saint, because he could have been like, no, you
Yeah.
took too long. I don't
Yeah,
want you
yeah.
now.
And to be clear, we never actually split up, I guess. I mean, we always lived in the same house. We were just kind of cohabitating
Hmm.
and co-parenting.
Co-parenting. We were a good
But
friend unit.
yeah.
Sounds lame, but we were friendly and respectable, and I'm grateful for that friendship. But yeah, in 2020, the world felt like it was ending, and I realized that if I wanted a partner for the end of the end of the world, I wanted this guy because he was kind and gentle, and he was my friend through all of that hell, and that speaks volumes to me. If all I can give you is crumbs and you still are my friend, then that speaks a lot about your character, in my opinion.
So 2020 hit. When do beliefs start? I'm not sure. And who was it first, or was it about the same time?
It was definitely Angela first. If it wasn't
Hmm.
for her kind of going through it, to be honest with you, I would probably still be at the same church doing the exact same thing I've been doing my whole life because that's all I know.
Oops.
Yeah. No, I can empathize. I tease my husband. If it hadn't been for him going through what he went through, I don't know what questions I ever would have asked. I would like to think that I would finally start asking questions, but I don't. I wouldn't have had a reason to, but it was such
Yeah.
a huge event.
And I think that's kind of part of the design of a lot of modern day religion because they
Hmm.
kind of don't want you to ask these questions because then you might not want to go anymore.
Very good point.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't that I wanted to stop believing, it's that I wanted to save myself. And my OCD was not going to go away. I tried everything. And at the end of the day, I told myself, you need to be here for your family. You need to be here for your children. And if church is harming you, how are you going to be there for that? It's just going to keep crushing you. And um, it was so hard, but I made a choice, even if it meant my salvation. And it did at the time. I said, I choose to live right now. And
Mhm.
so I kind of had to save my own life because the therapists weren't getting it. They weren't helping.
Yeah, and she never forced anything on me or the kids. Um, there was a period of time where I tried to take the kids to church and tried to keep doing the thing, but it never felt the same. And
People talk.
yeah, people talk.
Mhm. Yeah.
When you show up to church without your spouse, people talk.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't love that. And eventually I left it up to the kids. I asked them if they wanted to keep going or if they wanted to do other things. And we chose to do other things. And we love our Sundays.
We love Sundays. They're beautiful.
Yes.
And I feel more at peace now on a Sunday on a hike in the woods than I ever felt in church, ever. So that to me speaks volumes.
Yes, it's very true. It's almost like the manufactured experience at church is it feels manufactured.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then often when we get out and we get away from the busyness and the noise of city life, just to be in nature anywhere, like even just in a city park where you're just around trees. My big thing, just be around trees. There's so much research that's like if you just see trees, it's just good for us.
Yeah.
And like you said, it speaks volumes when that experience is so healing for
Yes.
your whole self. So 2020 was March the last time you guys went to church, or since then, or?
Oh, I hadn't been since 2017, but
Oh, okay.
I don't know. He just kind of felt it's not
No, I
even
probably went for maybe 3 months after she stopped going. Um, and then it was not every week, it was occasionally.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, once the kids said they weren't enjoying it, we just stopped going. And I don't think we've ever been back. We haven't even gone to
so proud.
family events or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I remember this is going to sound horrible, but I remember when churches had to go virtual and I was kind of grateful for the excuse,
Mhm.
with family members. Um but yeah, that year, it was October of that year, I just I knew that I wanted to be married and I wanted it to only be with him and that he was my person. So we got married in our backyard and I wore a black dress as a statement.
Yeah, this was 2020, and this was October 30th,
So
so
right before
the day
Halloween.
before
Oh,
Halloween. So
wow.
we got to have fun with it. Um, we encouraged people to dress up, and we just
Dress up, costume dress up, not
Yes.
fancy dress up.
yeah, it
Yes.
was just we got to have the wedding that we actually wanted instead of the church wedding that was
Forced.
put
Yes,
on us.
that you had to have. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
what, 19, 20? Like you were young, so you just did whatever you were told.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
literally, we got married 2 weeks after I turned 20,
Wow.
and
Yeah, I don't recommend that, guys. We say now we wish we had lived together before.
yeah, I like to think we still would have ended up together,
Sure.
but we probably would not have gotten married so young had we just done what a healthy normal person would do. And
Yeah, but we would have both gotten disowned from our families had we lived together. That was a big, big sin in their eyes. And we would get tearful confessions of other people that lived together. and just, can you believe this? Gossip in the form of a
Yes.
prayer request.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of scared us from doing what we actually wanted to do, because, oh my goodness, what if someone talks about you?
Mm-hmm.
So much value was put on our reputations. And so we didn't know we could question that.
Ben, I would like to backtrack a little. So after Angela went through her thing, what does your deconstruction beginning, how did that go for you? If
Um,
that makes sense.
well, basically, I was just trying to hold on to Angela,
All
um,
right.
which forced me to kind of see where she was coming from, see what she
Mm-hmm.
was going through, which made me, um, I don't know how to word this, but it made me start realizing that things weren't working out how they were supposed to. There's this like church formula, I'll say, where if you do this, this, and this, your life's going to be great and everything's going to be wonderful. And we were doing all those things, but we were struggling, you know, in our relationship. We were struggling financially. We were struggling just to get by. And it made me feel like everything was a lie. And I don't feel like, honestly, if you ask me now, I don't feel like everything was a lie. I do feel like there was a lot of manipulation going on.
Mm,
And I think it just, to step back and look at it from the outside, you can really see that things aren't how they portray it to be.
mm-hmm.
And so once you start realizing that, you need to really start thinking about, what do you believe, and does that fit in with what they're trying to tell you should believe? And just because they tell you should believe this doesn't mean you should.
That's very true. And I think there have to be great promises given to you in order to convince you that this is what you should do. When,
Yeah, they have to really do it somehow.
yeah, if you don't want to get married young, you don't want to start a family or whatever the things are that they say are best. If you don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to do those, it's like, no, but this is God's best for you. It's ideal. It's, all those kinds of things. And
Hmm.
yeah, they have to sell it. They have to sell you something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they either sell you on like the promise of a great life and a great eternity in heaven, or they try to scare you with an eternity in hell. And you know you shouldn't act out of fear, and you shouldn't.
Shouldn't act out of getting something.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think people should be the best versions of themselves, to just be that way, not to try to earn something, not to because they're afraid of something, but
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even when I've talked to Christians, people who are still Christians, they don't consciously think every single day, I might lose my salvation if I don't do this, or I might wake up to go to heaven, or I might lose heaven or salvation or whatever. But they do things for the same reason all the rest of us do it, because it's what's kind or it's what's
hmm
loving.
hmm
Yeah.
But then they have to sell the idea of like, but you will go to hell or you will not be able, like all these kinds of things, rather than like, no, this is just what's good and loving and you should do it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was raised in more of a literal interpretation of the Bible. And my mom was very big on threatening me with Paul's words, for example. A lot of, fornicators won't inherit the kingdom of God, and liars, and just, the list was so long that none of
Hmm.
us were going to get in. And I'm like, Mom, do you worship Paul or something? But yeah, so constant fear for me of one slip away from damnation, that's gonna, of course, mess you up,
Hmm.
and so anything in you, I mean, you can hide it, but you know it's there, and you know that you are not worthy in their eyes. and therefore maybe not in God's eyes if they're correct. And that is terrifying.
Something you guys hit on a little bit earlier, and I'm curious about it. We're close to the same age. Purity culture.
Oh, I could talk
I
about
know.
this all day.
Yeah, tell me more of how has that affected your self-identity, your marriage, parenting, all the things that it seeps into. It seeps
Oh
into
yeah.
everything.
So I think I don't want to be like, oh, I had it worse, but I think it was really hard for me as female. Yes, Ben was also raised in it, but
I can definitely tell you from my experience, it was worse for the girls.
I was in high school a little bit of church and got it, but since deconverting in conversations, yeah, girls, women, like they had it. It was really bad.
I remember at 12 years old. So I grew up in the 90s and I loved 90s fashion. I didn't have much in my little world, but I had 90s fashion. I thought. I was 12. So, but I remember being 12 years old in the back seat of the van going to church, and I was wearing this adorable, I thought it was adorable dress, had a happy face on it. It was hologrammed and or holographic, sorry.
Not important.
And it was the coolest dress in my little eyes. And I stepped out of the car and it was like an inch or two above my knees. But keep in mind, I'm 12.
Hmm.
And I got so shamed by my family because they hadn't noticed that my knees were showing, and they made me throw the dress away after church
Oh,
that day. Like I had to sit through church knowing I was in trouble, and then I had to throw it away. And my mom had bought me the dress, but she didn't know, my
hmm.
body was changing. And I felt so much shame that I don't like show my legs anymore. And it's because anytime I did, I would get like shamed. And just I was taught from a very young age that if a man, it was never about women, because couldn't be queer, but if a man
Oh
looked
yeah.
at me with lust, that was my fault. And I was condemning him to hell with my body because I'm super powerful, apparently.
Apparently.
Yeah. And so I was very scared of that as someone who was terrified of all things religion. And so purity culture gave me a nice old eating disorder. And I say that honestly, I developed anorexia when I was 12, right around the time of the dress incident, actually. But
Mm,
it's because I was going through puberty and I felt so much shame over developing breasts and hips and everything that's a normal part of the experience. But I wanted to hide. I started wearing really baggy clothes. And in my little mind, I thought, if they can't see me, they can't hurt me, you
hmm.
know? And if I don't show any skin, they can't hurt me because I'm not doing something bad now. And that stuck with me. I relapsed so many times, even after we got married. And it wasn't until, I wanted to become a mom that I really healed from that. And I still have to catch myself when I'm struggling. I will revert back to those thought patterns, and I have to remind myself I'm not in purity culture anymore. I don't have to feel that shame, and I'm allowed to take up space. So yeah, not a big fan of purity culture.
And I'm so sorry that yeah, I imagine little you, little 12-year-old you who just wants to wear her fun smiley face dress
To
to
church.
church. Yeah, to church. And oh, that it breaks my heart. That breaks my heart.
Yeah, I should get that dress again.
I think that's a great idea. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's an Etsy shop that can recreate it.
Yes. I
There you
love
go.
that. I love that. But yeah, when we started, can I tell the story of how we had to pray on the top of your car? Can I tell that story?
Sure.
It's like PG-13. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, go, you can say whatever you like.
So we had been dating a few months, and like I said, he had a car, and that's an important role in this story. We were making out one night because making out was like a gray area. We didn't ask
Mhm.
if it was okay. It was more like we didn't want to know.
Yes.
And so we're making out, and as can happen, hands go places, and hands went places. And I was like, cool, this is really fun. He was scared out of his mind. And he said, Angela, I'm worried. And so we got out of the car, we sat on the hood of his car, and we prayed that we would stay pure from now on. And then we went home and told our mothers.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything. She told her mom, and our moms were friends at the time.
They're mortal enemies now, which is
So
hilarious. But
I knew that if I didn't tell my mom, she was going to find out. So I had to be the one to tell her.
Yes.
yeah, we prayed on the top of his car, and I remember even in that state, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is stupid." Sorry.
So like the seeds were there this whole time. You
Oh
had no
yeah.
idea.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was not fun. But I tell you that story just so you know how seriously we took this. We were not messing around. We were gonna be, a couple for the Lord, which sounds really weird, but
It does now. I understand. But yes, like when you take it very seriously, you think these things are true. So of course you're going to, I would assume, now we know lots of people who quote believe it and it does not affect their life at all. Not at all. But you think that something that you absolutely think is true, eternity is at stake, all this stuff, you would take it seriously, even as young as you guys were.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think it was, back then it was easier to take it seriously because everything was black and white to us. I did not understand nuance until my 30s. And I always say now, gray is my favorite color because life exists in the gray. It's not all black and it's not all white. And people aren't all bad and they aren't all good. They're just people trying to make it through the day. And so once I started to accept that, I was able to give myself so much grace and him grace, you know. So I think we're in a much healthier state now on the other side.
Yeah, I'd say we're much healthier now. One thing that I've been working on to this day is just communicating better because we didn't mention this, but I have five brothers, and I call myself the oldest middle child. So I tend to just kind of let other people do their thing, and I just sit in the corner and watch and don't say anything. So I'm to this day, if I'm having a bad day, I have to make myself tell Angela that, hey, I was having a bad day and I don't know why, but here it is.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen so much growth in him since leaving religion, though, because I almost feel like he was ashamed of it before. And there's a lot of toxic masculinity that was taught to us. And so he didn't really show his emotional side at all. And I would feel like I was in a relationship with a brick wall. And I am a very emotional person. I am an INFJ. I'm a Myers Briggs girl. I'm old school. But very empathetic, very deep, and I need the people around me to know that. I don't want to have small talk with you. I want to talk about your traumas and your fears and your joys too, I guess.
Oh
But
yeah.
so him kind of stonewalling me whenever we would have a conflict was so hard. And I had to finally tell him, I don't want you being macho man, sucking all your feelings. I don't feel safe with that. I need a human with emotions and feelings. So that was hard because when you're taught to man up, you're going to think that people will think less of you when you have to be vulnerable. And we had to learn how to be vulnerable with each other. We're still learning, actually.
I very much understand. I grew up in a home where you just said, "Fine, whatever." You didn't actually interact and discuss and deal with conflict. You just said, "Whatever." And so right after my husband and I got married, he is not a dictatorial kind of person at all, but he very quickly said, "You're not going to say whatever or you're fine if you're not."
Mm,
And
Good.
I thought, what on earth? But it was because he knew enough to know this will not go well if we just don't deal with stuff. Now we did have to grow in. He would be like, let's talk about it right now. And I'm like, I can't. I need some time to organize my thoughts and like deal with my own stuff and then I can come back and have a conversation. So we
yeah.
had to make it work, but we've been married, this year is 18 years, and we still have so many things we're figuring out when it comes to communication and what to say and when and how. But yeah, I can empathize with that situation. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer your question on how that's affecting us now, like
Yeah.
I teach our kids to be proud of emotions and that they're helpful tools for us. And it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel joy. All of these different emotions are what makes us, fully human. And so we're not doing the toxic masculinity thing in our house. And that's one of my lines in the sand. We feel our feelings. I have a manifesto on our wall that I wrote. um, I always was really triggered by the Christian one that said, "In this house we will serve the Lord." I always hated that. And I hated it because you can't make a decision for someone else. And that statement to me always said, "My children don't get a choice," And that's not cool. And I never liked it, even as a Christian. So I made my own. And it said, "In this house, we feel our feelings, we love each other, and bad words are words that are used to hurt others. You know, you are free to portray yourself in any way that makes you feel like you. We celebrate you. Be kind, carry on." I'm paraphrasing, but
Yes, yeah. But I love it though. I feel like you should start an Etsy shop and you could sell those. Like you would be so surprised how many families would want something like that in their homes.
yeah, I like to kind of appropriate Christianese and use it for good. That's my toxic
I love
trait.
it.
Yeah, I have fun with that.
So where are you guys now? I know that you guys are not atheists. Do you even have labels or are you just enjoying not having a label?
I will start first. I'm comfortable saying I'm agnostic, meaning I don't subscribe to everything that was forced upon me. Do I think maybe there's something greater than us? Yes. I'm a big nature lover.
Hmm.
I I feel very spiritual when I'm on a mountain or in the woods. Um, if I can be in the woods on a mountain, that's just
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
yes.
With a lake down at the bottom. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I like to think there's something greater than us, and maybe that's just love, but love is enough.
Hmm.
Um, I say if I have any religion, my religion is empathy, which it's funny because in the church they're trying to paint that, in a not so great light right now. But I think it's my greatest superpower, that I can care about you, just because I care, not because I have someone pulling the strings for me. Um, so I say I'm agnostic. Would it be cool if there's something after this? Sure. But I'm not making my life decisions based on what may come after I'm dead. Um, we'll find out when we get there. So, how about you?
For me, me and Angela actually talk about this
Oh,
pretty regularly, and she has informed me that I am agnostic.
Okay.
based on what I have told her. And for me, it's I believe that this may just be me holding on to hope that there is a heaven, because the thought of,
Mhm.
there being nothing afterwards is terrifying.
I
Oh,
get
that's
that.
fascinating.
And so I believe that there probably is a heaven, and God created the earth, and whatever God you want to, whatever you call God, I don't know. And my biggest issue with church is I think that people messed it up.
That's
And
interesting. Yeah.
I have a really hard time believing that there was a book written by several different people who all had agendas of their own,
Mhm.
and then translated multiple times by people who all have agendas of their own. And even if you're not meaning to like implement your biases, they're always going to show up.
Mhm.
And so if you're translating something from another language to where words can kind of be twisted around, you're going to show your biases in one way or another. And that's where I stand on it, just because it doesn't add up that
Mhm.
something written thousands of years ago, millions, whatever, and it wouldn't be, there's no way to preserve that the way it's meant to be preserved, I think. And for me, it just, we've seen too many good Christian people, I use air quotes there, um, who use religion to make themselves feel like they're better than other people.
Mm.
And that just doesn't really sit well with me.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to be a part of something that is meant to make other people feel bad about themselves, or anything that, what am I trying to say?
Well, to give an example of this, I told him recently, because he didn't know this, that the word homosexuality was not even in the Bible until the 1900s.
Mhm.
And when I found that out as a queer person, I was angry as hell. Can I say hell? I mean,
Yes. Oh, you're totally fine.
yeah, I told him that it wasn't even in the Bible until kind of recently.
Mhm.
And that makes me really mad. Like, why would they put that in there other than to abuse people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that I heard, I don't know, it's probably a year, maybe a year and a half ago, that I didn't do any research on to verify if this was accurate or not. But supposedly, what this person was saying is the name Lucifer was not in the original text, and that there were two people higher up in the church that were going after a higher position. And one of them happened to be translating the Bible into a different language, and the other one's name was Lucifer.
Stop. Okay. If
I don't know
So
any of this.
if the,
I haven't fact checked any of
okay,
that,
What a cool
I
story, though.
know
but
that's a fun story. Like,
so it's just things like that that make me believe, how can this not have been tampered with?
Yeah, tampered with is a good way to put
yeah, that is a good point.
it.
Now I have hung out online with Jehovah's Witnesses recently, and we sit and chat, and it was fascinating. But where I am now, when I was an evangelical, they were like on the fringes and had all these weird beliefs. Now I look at
Yeah,
the evangelical beliefs, and there's just as much evidence for those being true as Jehovah's Witness, Seventh Day Adventist, what Muslims,
Mhm.
other religions that are based off hearsay, and then people wrote some stuff down, and then everyone says it's true, rather than like any kind of real solid evidence that any of it is real or true.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know about the Lucifer story, but I'm so curious, and I will be Googling.
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
Googling after this. Even if it is urban legend, that's fascinating. That's a fun, like you said, a fun story. I have really enjoyed this evening. Is there anything more that you guys would like to say? Anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked?
Um, let's see. We talked about purity culture, our upbringing, how we found our way back to each other, how I wore black in protest, and because I looked hot in it.
I love it.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, for context, I wore a top hat to the wedding.
That's so fun. I love it.
It was cute. It was the wedding we always should have
Yeah.
had.
I love that you guys did that. You took ownership of that.
Yeah, and it felt more real than that one back in 2005. So
Do you have any books, podcasts, any recommendations, Instagram, YouTube, that we can put in the show notes or that you can say here to just let us know, like, this was helpful and instrumental in our deconstruction stories?
oh yes, you said books. Here we go. For me, one of the biggest books for me was first of all, Love Wins by Rob Bell. And I get that he's a controversial figure, and I love that for him because he can take it. He's great. The idea that I could let go of hell, I was bawling my eyes through that book, and it felt like such a gift to me in my vulnerable, fearful state. That was the first one. Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan. I read that in 2017 when everything was falling apart. And just to see that we are so tiny in the grand scheme of things, and that all of these religions and all of our, we think we're the center of the universe. There's so many universes. So that book really messed me up, but in the best way.
I understand.
So that, and then every single book on purity culture.
Well, the ones shining a light on it.
Yes,
yeah,
to be
actually.
fair. Pure by Linda K. Klein was a big healer for me. Loved that book. And then this isn't like a religious leaning book at all, but the book Wild by Cheryl Strayed is my absolute favorite book in the entire world. And it absolutely tied in with my deconstruction because she goes on this wilderness trip to grieve her mother, and she's made a lot of like sexual indiscretions, and she's, maybe not doing what's the best for her. And through this hike, she's able to realize that, oh, I wasn't a bad, horrible girl. I was someone grieving the loss of my mother. And so I can give myself grace, and I don't have to feel shame over how I coped with a horrible tragedy. So that book was really giving me permission to be nicer to myself during a very grieving period for me. So those are my books. I'm a podcast junkie. I will say one that I love because it feels like my atheist aunties are just with me is deconversion therapy. I love them so much. They're so sweet. So I guess I recommend that too. But
And I get all my news from her. So.
Well,
Yeah.
that works. So, yes, tell the audience, how can we find you online?
So we do have a little like travel DIY Instagram that people are welcome to follow. It's called Build an Adventure, and we're documenting just life, but through our lens, and projects we work on together, and building a new life together. That sounds kind of churchy, and I don't mean it to, but
Yeah, we're on all the social.
oh
under
yeah,
that, so.
oh yeah, under Build an Adventure.
Okay, yeah.
So
We will.
follow us if you're
Yes,
nice.
absolutely. And yes, we'll put all this in the show notes so that everyone can have it. And you're talking about building a new life together. Esther Perel, I don't know if you're familiar with her work.
Oh girl.
She talks about like having a second marriage with the same person. Like you can
Yes.
have a whole new life with the same person that you've been with.
Yeah, and I much prefer this
Yes.
one.
Yes, I love it. Well, again, Ange and Ben, thank you so much. This was a great interview. I loved it.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's like talking to a bestie.
Final thoughts on the episode. First, as always, I want to thank Arline for guest hosting. She is amazing at this work. And to say to anyone listening that if you want to tell your story about your deconstruction, deconversion, your faith transition, and you're uncomfortable doing so with me, Arline is available, and please reach out to us either via email or on Facebook, and Arline will set that interview up. In an upcoming interview that Arline and I do together, I talk about one of the main things that I learned is how destructive the purity culture has been for people's lives. This was not my experience. I definitely experienced purity culture, but not in the same way at the same level. I didn't grow up with it. So Ben and Ange's story is ultimately heartbreaking to me to hear how devastating purity culture has been in their lives. Ange talked about her OCD like tendencies and the combination of that with religion, the scrupulosity, and what a vicious feedback loop that could be. I think that's incredibly true for people who have scrupulous tendencies. They find themselves within religion and they can see themselves as dirty, and so they work harder to be better, and then that doesn't work. And it's just this vicious cycle that one has to break out of to get healthy, as Ange did. It was poignant and telling that Ange's response to the Pulse shooting, she wasn't able to even verbalize what the problem was, but recognizing her own queerness without being able to say it out loud yet. And that her experience of that was completely different from the people around her. The other thing I really appreciated about their stories is how honest they were. Ben talked about how he probably would have just stayed the same, done the same things, thought the same things, had it not been for Ange asking questions that led him to change himself. They also talk about how neither of them handled things perfectly, that when one partner comes out as queer when they hadn't been before, that would be very challenging. I can only imagine, based on the experience of being unequally yoked, an atheist with a believer, how there has to be this reworking. And Arline quoting the psychologist talking about a second marriage to the same person. The last thing I want to talk about is Ange saying, if I have any religion, that religion is empathy. That really is the summation of secular grace. Secular grace is about loving and accepting the people in our lives where they are at and caring for them. And this is more than just altruism. It's more than just being kind for kindness' sake. This is because it affects us as well. There's this concept in South Africa called Ubuntu. You probably have heard the word from the Linux operating system, but it means I am because you are, or my humanity is tied into your humanity. And that's the kind of secular grace that I'm talking about. I agree with Ange that my religion is empathy. I want to thank Arline for co-hosting today. I want to thank Ben and Ange for the brutal honesty about their relationship and the experience of growing up in purity culture and the freedom on the other side. Thank you, Arline, Ben, and Ange, for being on the podcast. The secular grace thought of the week is about gratitude. For those of us in the United States, this is the Thanksgiving week, and this is your yearly reminder that religion, and Christianity specifically, does not own gratitude. Even talking about gratitude might be slightly triggering to some people. But my secular grace perspective on gratitude is that both the objects and the subjects of our gratitude are our loved ones, our family members, our friends, that we need not be grateful to a deity, something outside, something external, transcendent, but rather we can be grateful to one another. You can even say that you are grateful to the universe or anything else if that helps you along in this process. but I experience immense gratitude for my family, for the people that I love, for the career that I have. But more than that, the lesson that I often talk about here is that I am grateful for very small things. And this seems really dumb, but this is how I think you can actually experience gratitude on a daily basis. I am grateful for little things like my pillow. I am grateful for a warm bed. I am grateful for my favorite tacos. I am grateful for time spent with my daughter. It doesn't have to be epic and big and indescribable. It can be these tiny moments that you recognize that you are grateful for. And that is an attitude of gratitude. That is a life of gratitude. And that is a full life. We are winding down the year, but I still have a number of things lined up. Next week, we're going to talk to Jessica Moore again about purity culture and her experience. The week after that, we'll have Arline interviewing Nikki Pappas. And then in late December, we have Arline and I interviewing one another. So I interview Arline first, and then Arline interviews me. They're basically like a Ask Me Anything kind of scenario, but with a co-host. And I have some amazing things already lined up for 2023 that I won't get into yet, but I have had some really great interviews that are in the can, ready to go. And so I'm excited about hitting the ground running for 2023. Until then, my name is David, and I am trying to be the graceful atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. Time for the footnotes. The beat is called Waves from Mackay Beats. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can promote it on your social media. You can subscribe to it in your favorite podcast application, and you can rate and review it on podchaser.com. You can also support the podcast by clicking on the affiliate links for books on gracefulatheist.com. If you have podcast production experience and you would like to participate with the podcast, please get in touch with me. Have you gone through a faith transition and do you need to tell your story? Reach out. If you are a creator or work in the deconstruction, deconversion, or secular humanism spaces and would like to be on the podcast, just ask. If you'd like to financially support the podcast, there's links in the show notes. To find me, you can Google Graceful Atheist, you can Google deconversion, you can Google secular grace, you can send me an email, gracefulatheist@gmail.com, or you can check out the website, gracefulatheist.com. My name is David, and I am trying to be the graceful atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. This has been the Graceful Atheist Podcast.